Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, I'm going to be testing out the most toxic team in the Fossil Cup to see if it is worth using. Now, the team consists of a Firefang Shadow Mawile on the lead, Bite Shadow Sharpedo as the save switch, and Razorleaf Ludicolo as the closer. Now, this team was actually created in the previous rotation of the Fossil Cup by Tho Tactical. I wanted to test out the team and see does it still hold up now that there have been some meta changes. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches and let's get toxic. Hopping into the first match, picking up a terrible lead, Shadow Mawile into Pelipper. Mawile gets absolutely destroyed here, so I'm going to save switch into Shadow Sharpedo, and the opponent is going to respond with Registeel. As you can see, the bite damage absolutely shredding through the Regi. They go for the Zap Cannon, and they do get the attack drop. That's a bit unfortunate. I'm going to fire off a Poison Fang here, so at the very least, I'm debuffed, and now they're debuffed as well. The Poison Fang will allow me to farm down and win switch advantage, which is incredibly nice. In comes the Pelipper farming up, and they're going to get hit with a Poison Fang here. Poison Fang, of course, would do a lot of damage. Sharpedo is extremely attack weighted, and now we send in Ludicolo. This is a 50-50 call. I'm predicting they're full sending the Hurricane, and they do. In the back, it's a Shadow Alolan Sandslash, and Mawile absolutely tears it to shreds with Fire Fang. They make the drill run, that KOs the Mawile. Ludicolo looking for the farm down and gets it. Back in comes the Pelipper. It's going to be a race. Can Pelipper make it to the Hurricane? Moment of truth. Did they get there? They did not. And that is a good game. We see the Dream lead in the next match, Shadow Mawile into Shadow Alolan Sandslash. Opponent will immediately save switch into Jellicent, and it's time for Shadow Sharpedo to absolutely go off. Sharpedo is so glassy that a Shadow Ball comes very close to KOing, so I will actually commit a shield here. But the good news is, I should be able to get a shield back from the A-Slash because a Shadow Crunch basically KOs. I'm farming up. I decide to go for the Poison Fang bait here, anticipating that they're going to be shielding, and they do. With the debuff, these bites are absolutely shredding through the Sandslash. Sandslash will be forced to fire off the Ice Punch. I'm expecting them to immediately switch, so I actually just send in the Ludicolo to get an energy head start, and my opponent is going to respond with Pelipper. Pelipper does have a lot of energy here. This is a tough call to make. I shield. It's the Weather Ball. Farming up here. I go for the catch onto Mawile, but I don't get the Hurricane catch. Instead, I'm going to be hit with double Weather Ball. The question is, can Mawile tank this? This is going to be really close. Mawile tanks it with 1 HP, Fire Fangs the A-Slash, and secures the win. We've got some spice on the lead in the next match, Shadow Mawile into Credilli. Credilli, not a Pokemon you see too commonly in the Fossil Cup, so definitely pretty cool to see my opponent using it. They're staying in this matchup, and this matchup is pretty solid for Mawile, so I'm just going to go for the Power-Up Punch, continuing to ramp up my damage, and I should be able to tank one move here. They go for the Rock Slide. They're going to make another move. Since they're staying in, my guess is they're probably weak to Mawile somewhere in the back, so I will elect to shield and just farm down. And this way, if they just bring in a hard counter, I can look to pivot. They send in Quagsire. I pivot into Sharpedo, and in comes a Scavalier. Those counters absolutely destroy the Sharpedo, but Sharpedo did a lot of bite damage along the way. They go for the drill run. I'm just going to let this go because this is Razorleaf downrange for the Ludicolo. Opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. We see a Nightmare lead in the next match, Shadow Mawile into Lantern. Now, when this team was originally created, it was before Lantern had access to Surf, so Lantern was a lot less common. And Lantern is a massive core breaker for this team, as of course, it does extremely well into both the Mawile and the Sharpedo. So being ABA weak, you're kind of forced to just sacrifice the Mawile and send in the Ludicolo, but the opponent is probably running some good checks to grass in the back. So the moment they see the Ludicolo, they can just pivot out here, and now I'm in a very uncomfortable situation. Sharpedo looking for the farm down, not gonna happen. Opponent running Skarmory in this meta, which is a Pokemon that's not seen very often. Poison Fang will KO, but they can just spark down with the Lantern, and I'm gonna be in a pretty difficult spot because if they pivoted into that hard of a counter, they probably have something like an Escavalier waiting for me in the back. So they're gonna fire off the Thunderbolt here. I'm looking for the farm down with the Ludicolo. There's the Escav, and I resign the match. Hopping into the next match, leading Shadow Mawile into Kingdra. Now this is a very interesting matchup. They are double resisting the Fire Fangs, and I am triple resisting the Dragon Breaths, so this is a matchup entirely dependent on charge moves. They're going to strike first, going for the Octazooka, and they do get the debuff. I'm going to farm up to the Play Rough, and I'm going to bait with the Power-Up Punch. I was having a bit of lag, so I ended up refreshing my game data, so of course the game now thinks I am a brand new player, so it gets to teach me how to do charge moves. I'm going to be shielding up the Octazooka here. Do they get 2 debuffs in a row? Yes, they do. I'm now 3 stages debuffed, 4 from the Octazooka, and then I got 1 back from the Power-Up Punch. In comes the Quagsire, I bring in the Sharpedo, and we bait out the Escav, and this game is over. I can send in the Mawile, no shield because I've done enough damage that I can just Razor Leaf down with the Ludicolo. In comes the Ludicolo, and the opponent concedes the match. We see a terrific lead in the next match, Shadow Mawile into Escavalier. Opponent will immediately save switch into Jellicent, and we know what to do with Jellicent. In comes Bite Sharpedo. They only go for the Surf here, and Surf, I can actually survive. As you can see, that does so much damage. If they go for the Shadow Ball, I have to commit the shield, but since they didn't, I'm now in a way better situation where I don't have to give up a shield, and I can go for a Poison Fang onto the Escav. Poison Fang, of course, not going to do a lot of damage, but it does get that ever-important debuff. They farm down, but the switch clock is not up. Mawile fully farms down. In the back, it's a Mantine, and this game is over. I can just commit to the fast move beatdown, so I'm going to be firing off the Power-Up Punch. They're of course not going to shield a resisted move, but I'm just looking for fast move pressure here. I can tank whatever they throw. They go for the Ice Beam, that of course does more damage than the Bubble Beam, but I can now just send in Ludicolo, and the Razor Leaves are going to be doing too much damage. They go for the Bubble Beam, that does absolutely nothing, and they concede the match. Picking up a terrible lead in the next match, Shadow Mawile into Shadow Marshtomp. Immediate safe switch into Shadow Sharpedo. The Marshtomp is going to stay in this matchup, and they're firing off the Mud Bomb. That would easily KO, so I will commit the shield. And now in comes Tentacruel. These poison jabs are tearing through the Sharpedo. Sharpedo does make the crunch. Please call the bait here, opponent. They do not. They respect it. And Tentacruel is a massive core breaker for this team. Tentacruel is not really run too much in the Fossil Cup, but man, it is awful for this team to see. I'm not going to make it to the Play Rough. I go for the Power-Up Punch. I do win the CMP tie over the Tentacruel, but unfortunately, I just don't really see a win con because odds are if they're leading Marshtomp, they probably have a good counter to Ludicolo in the back. They go for the Acid Spray. I'm going to bring in the Ludicolo. They have their own Mawile, and I concede the match. We see a great lead in the next match, Shadow Mawile into Ferrothorn. Opponent is going to save switch into a Shadow Swampert, get absolutely deleted by Ludicolo. The Mud Boy save switch not paying dividends for my opponent, and now they're going to send in the Ferrothorn. Ferrothorn farming up quite a lot of energy here. They're going to be going for the Power Whip, which does hit for some solid neutral damage. But the nice thing is Ludicolo is able to tank it and make the Ice Beam. Ice Beam will get some chip damage onto that Ferrothorn, and Ferrothorn is going to be in for a rough time if they try and farm down, so they're forced to throw their energy. That works for me. They go for the Power Whip. I can send back in the Mawile. Mawile can't quite get the farm down, but I'm trusting in Sharpedo to win this game. Thunder does quite a lot of damage in the back. They have Jellicent, and the opponent concedes the match. The Steel leads continue in the next match, Shadow Mawile into Registeel. Opponent will immediately save switch into Pelipper, and for the Pelipper save switch, you do need to counter switch into the Ludicolo. If you bring in the Sharpedo unfortunately does have to give up 2 shields, but speaking of shields, Pelippers love to bait, so I no shield the Weather Ball bait, and now I can just shield once and farm down. So that is a massive bait call there, as now I get to leave with energy to threaten the Registeel. I don't want to debuff my attack by going for the Leaf Storm, so I'm just going to go for the Ice Beam to get a little bit of chip damage. Opponent actually shields up, respecting the potential Leaf Storm. Can I make it to the Leaf Storm? Come on, Ludicolo, and we do not get there. I'm going to send in the Mawile. Zap Cannon does a lot of damage here. It doesn't quite KO, but it does a lot. They go for the Focus Blast in the back. They have a Dragon Tail Shadow Gyarados. My Sharpedo gets absolutely melted, and I resign the match. We're looking for redemption, and we see a great lead to do it. Shadow Mawile into A-Slash. Opponent save switches into Golisopod, and honestly, what I believe I should have done was either stay in with the Mawile to get some Fire Fang damage, or send in the Ludicolo. But I end up choosing the worst option, which is sending in Sharpedo, and I'm gonna have to double shield the Sharpedo here, because X-Scissor would of course easily one-shot. So I keep switch advantage, but I had to give up 2 shields to do so, which is definitely not ideal. In comes the Alolan Sandslash, and I'm baiting with the Poison Fang here, hoping for a shield. Opponent calls the bait, but the bites are absolutely shredding the A-Slash, and they're forced to fire off their charge move. Ice Punch is gonna KO. I can send in the Mawile. In the back, they have Jellicent, so keeping switch advantage proves to be a good decision. They're going for the Shadow Ball here. Shadow Ball will hit for quite a lot of damage. The nice thing is they need another Shadow Ball. A Surf is not going to cut it, and they don't get there. This is gonna be close. I need the farm down. Sandslash leaves with energy. Did they make the drill run? If they did, this is game over. Sandslash, it's only an Ice Punch, and against all odds, we still get the win. Picking up a terrible lead in the next match, Shadow Mawile into Pelipper. Immediate save switch, as always, into Sharpedo. Opponent is going to respond with a Razor Leaf Ludicolo, and we get absolutely deleted. Oh my goodness, that is definitely not ideal. I'm going to send in the Mawile now. Mawile looking to farm up, but a Leaf Storm will KO Mawile from this health range. So I'm now in a bit of an uncomfortable situation where not only do I not have switch advantage, but I don't have shield advantage either. I'm going to fire off the Play Rough here, hoping my opponent decides to call a bait. Play Rough does get shielded. Switch Clock not yet up, so I'm not able to switch, and I just have to let the Mawile go. I have to trust in Ludicolo here, but this is looking like an uphill battle. In comes the Ludicolo. Ludicolo farming up. Pelipper has a lot of energy. I will commit the shield. It's the Hurricane. That's a big shield in the back. They have a Scavalier, and we resign the match. Hopping into the next match, we see a great lead, Shadow Mawile into Registeel. Opponent staying in this matchup, so it looks like they are ABA weak to the Mawile. And if they have something in the back that's weak to Mawile, I'm going to want to preserve HP. So I'm going to go for the Power-Up Punch, shield once, and look to fully commit to the farm down here. Opponent is going to be firing off the Zap Cannon. Zap Cannon does not get the debuff, and a bit of luck goes our way. I get the farm down. I'm looking to pivot. In comes Swampert. I pivot into the Sharpedo. In comes Lucario. Sharpedo gets deleted, but now this game is won. I can send back in the Mawile. I have energy. Fire Fangs hitting for super effective damage. They no-shield the Power-Up Punch. I believe this should just be a Power-Up Punch of their own here, as they did fall short of a potential Shadow Ball. They can bring back in the Swampert. My switch clock still not yet up, so I'm firing off the Power-Up Punch. Power-Up Punch is going to be no-shielded by the Swampert. Swampert looking for the farm down. In comes the Ludicolo, and Swampert gets deleted. Picking up a terrible lead in the next match, Shadow Mawile into Lantern, and Lantern leads are just such a nuisance for this team, as Shadow Mawile and the Sharpedo both get absolutely shredded by it. And the unfortunate thing is that Lantern teams are typically really weak to Mawile in the back, but there's just not really a good way to let the Mawile see that backline. Because if you switch it to the Sharpedo, they can just stay in and very comfortably win that matchup, whereas here, I try and go for the strategy of sacking the Mawile, and it's just not going to help me win this game. They send in the Sandslash, which Mawile would love to see, but unfortunately, that's just not going to be able to happen. They make it to another charge move. I'm forced to burn all my shields on the Sharpedo. Sharpedo is just so glassy. I get the farm down, but I'm already close to the red health. And this game, I mean, I'm going to continue to play it out until I see the final Mon, but it is almost assuredly over. I go for the crunch. They shield up the Lantern. Lantern gets the farm down, getting rid of Sharpedo. And actually, I don't see the third, and I resign the match. Hopping into the final match, leading Shadow Mawile into Shadow Gyarados. Shadow Gyarados is incredibly good in this cup, but Gyarados in this particular matchup is very reliant on landing charge moves. The Dragon Breaths are triple resisted. They save switch into a Shadow Quagsire, and oh my goodness, Ludicolo having a party as it deletes the Quagsire from the game. They make it to the Stone Edge, but Ludicolo able to tank that pretty comfortably. And now we'll have to see, are they going to send in that Gyarados? They do. Gyarados taking a lot of damage from the Razor Leafs. They're firing off a charge move, And that works for me, as they're going to be able to KO the Ludicolo, but I can send in the Mawile, get the farm down. What do they have in the back? They have Swampert in the back. So I can just continue to buff up the Fire Fang damage, get as much fast move pressure as I can, and then once they eventually throw a move to KO the Mawile, I can just bite down with the Sharpedo. They're now shielding power-up punches, which is a really tough spot to be in. Resisted Fire Fangs have never looked so strong. Hydro Cannon KOs. In comes the Sharpedo. Sharpedo gets the farm down, and that is a good game. And now some final thoughts on the team. First off, this is a really fast team to run, so if you're ever having a busy day and you need to get some sets in for this cup, this is a really good team for that, as you'll get your sets done, win or loss, extremely quickly, since all of your Pokemon are typically pretty glassy. However, I will say, with Lantern having Surf and being a lot more common, I feel like the team doesn't hold up quite as well as it did the previous time Fossil Cup was here, because Lantern on the lead just feels basically unwinnable for this particular team. So it's a team you can use for fast sets, but I would say it feels almost more like a rock, paper, scissors alignment based team rather than a team that can be used consistently for climbing. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support guys provide is absolutely incredible. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.